is influencing these protests?
I think it's probably coming from two sources. And I, again, take this a little personally. I'm a Penn alum and was invited to campus by the Free Speech Society last April to give remarks. And the virulence with which the very announcement of the speech, the attacks on the website were such that I required 3 levels of armed guards to go to my own campus and talk about how I like free speech and I think hating Jews is a bad idea.
Controversial, Victoria. So controversial.
When did this become radical?
I don't know.
And, that speech wasn't free. The city of Philadelphia, the University of Pennsylvania, and the Heritage Foundation all paid so I could do that in safety.
The book is The Battle for the Jewish State, How Israel and America Can Win. Victoria Coates is the author. She's the Vice President of National Security and Foreign Policy at the Heritage Foundation. You have probably seen her writing in the New York Post, in the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, many, many places. This is not her first book, but it's an important one and a timely one. It's not only timely, it's timeless. This is information you can use. And she gives you a lot of history in this book and a lot of forward thinking as well, what we might be able to expect with Trump back in the White House. She's got a vast amount of experience, and I hope you'll enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Victoria Coates is next. Victoria, welcome. I'm so glad to speak with you. And this is such an important topic. And I just wonder, you've got a ton of books on the bookshelf behind you. I do. There are so many. Why did you feel this book was important in filling the void that is out there?
Well, great to be with you, Michelle. What I keep saying about the book is I wish I didn't have to write it, but I'm glad I could. The Battle for the Jewish State comes out of about 10 years of visiting Israel, watching Israel, working on U.S.-Israel policy. And what we all saw in the months after October 7th, has been befuddling. And I kept being asked by, friends overseas, by members of the press, by fellow think tankers, how did we get here? How in the months after October 7th, these horrible attacks on Israel that were attacks on Americans as well, why do we have Hamas supporters on the streets of the United States? What is happening? And I felt like, I had the opportunity and a very forgiving publisher in Encounter Press to get this out pretty quickly, just to inform the debate about what's happening, yes, in the Middle East, but also here in America.
It's been astonishing to me. Count me among those who have just been flabbergasted. And I went to Berkeley, so there you go. And this one is it's astonishing to me. I guess we got to start with the big overall question, which some people still don't seem to understand. And someone like you can really give us maybe a more clarifying answer. Why does Israel exist?
Well, that again is a key question that I tried to answer in The Battle for the Jewish State. It's really chapter 2 of the book, and it does a deep dive into why modern Israel exists, founded, of course, in 1948 in the wake of the Holocaust in World War II. But that wasn't the sole driver. The movement of Zionism, of trying to establish a new homeland for the Jews, had been active in the 19th century under Theodor Herzl in Europe, because Herzl concluded that even then, 50 years before World War II, that Jews were not safe in Europe and assimilation wasn't going to work and education wasn't going to work, and that there was this growing danger. And that's what led to the Zionist movement, eventually the establishment of Israel. And I hate to date myself this way, but when I was born, Israel was 20 years old. So still, in many ways, an idea. It's now 76 years old and one of the most powerful countries on the planet. So that trajectory, that half-century trajectory, I think is critical to understand, not as current events, but as history now. And so tracing the history of the U.S. engagement with Israel under presidents from Truman to Trump and Biden even, different presidents take different approaches. But what has emerged, particularly over the last 10 years, is the vital nature of that relationship for U.S. security. This originates with Reagan, but it really starts to flower over the last decade with modern intelligence sharing practices, among other things. So all of that history is in the book, just to inform, as I said, the debate over Israel, and hopefully readers take away the significance of this relationship.
I've had people who are close to me who I was with people who are close to me on October 7th. And I remember I was so sick to my stomach. And one of the people in the group that I was with said, yeah, but imagine, this is horrible, but imagine you've just been kicked out of California. We were in California at the time. Imagine all these people came in and said, you know what? California is really our land. Get out of here. And I thought, this is a disingenuous argument, but would you please, what would you have said to that person if you had been in the room?
I would have said, well, actually, the people trying to do the kicking out are the people who attacked on October 7th, that Israel was never about kicking out anybody. It was always about creating a safe homeland for Jews, yes. But if you look at modern Israel, it is the only place in the Middle East where, for example, the Christian population is growing. And there are Arab Israelis who serve in the Knesset and who even have been cabinet ministers. So it isn't about exclusion, except for the folks who chant river to the sea, who want not and as a co-state with Israel, they want to destroy Israel. And that's what October 7th was about. And the other big issue here, Michelle, is a new phrase for me that I learned in the course of writing this book called settler colonialism.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that one too.
Which is what informs that viewpoint. And the issue there for Americans is, yes, they're coming for Israel now as the country that was illegally appropriated by outsiders from indigenous peoples. But guess who's next on that list? The United States. Our two countries are unique in that nature. And so, yes, they're coming for little Satan now, but in that scenario, we're big Satan and we're both Satan. And so that's why this is also an attack on the United States.
Well, so I want to get back to that in a second, but what about all the other colonial settlement people? Like why isn't there attack on the UK or Canada or Australia?
Well, Canada kind of falls into the same boat in that it was settled from outside in its current incarnation. And, but the UK, of course, the British are the British.
Right, but they settled in other places. Are people satisfied now that they've been booted out of their colonial, extremities, if you will?
That's certainly the movement behind anti-colonialism. And yes, I mean that's what sort of is the impetus behind independence of colonies. Although that has been, I think, beneficial in a lot of cases. But in this, in particular, it's the United States and Israel. And I think it is the idea that our countries are based on ideas, not ethnicity.
Yeah.
And so that is why we are a particular target.
Well, and I've also heard and read that there's a certain amount of, I want to use the right words, but I'm not going to be able to, so bear with me. Almost an envy or an idea that we have had too much success in the United States and Israel. I mean, Israel is a bird. I mean, it has been a birthplace of ideas and meritocracy and flourishing industry and commerce, as the United States have, largely due to the thing you talked about, which is freedom. And it seems as though rather than try to keep up, people just hate it.
It's really called disproportionate success, that our two countries have had more than our fair share.
More than our fair share.
That's, I mean, for Israel, it gets back to the whole anti-Semitism issue that Jews somehow are in control of technology, and they exploit that to expand their power. And I think, as you said, the real secret sauce here is freedom, is a free economic system. And I go into that in the book because Israel actually starts as a quasi-socialist country. And it's really under then Finance Minister Netanyahu in the 80s and 90s that the economy of Israel throws off a lot of those socialist shackles, and the innovation and the prosperity are extraordinary. And you look at all of the Nobel Prizes, everything they've developed from, ways from the GPS system to the cherry tomato. I mean, it's amazing when the boycott, divestiture, sanctions folks say they were just going to renounce Israeli technology. They have a real hard time, throwing away that iPhone. Stop eating tomatoes, throw away all the biotech, all of that Israel has developed. And so, yes, instead of seeing this as a great good for humanity, as the United States is, it gets attacked as I said, disproportionately successful.
Disproportionately successful. I know things feel uncertain right now. They do to me too. The markets are unpredictable. And we're even hearing these whispers about World War III. And like so many of you, I wanted to understand how to prepare my portfolio for turbulent times like these. And that led me to learn more about American Independence Gold. Gold and silver have historically stood the test of time through wars, recessions, market crashes. They're not just investments. They represent stability and peace of mind for families like mine. And right now I'm holding a gold bar from American Independence Gold in my hands. It is real. It is heavy, and it could be yours when you open a gold IRA with $10,000 or more. American Independence Gold is a veteran-owned company that supports our military families and first responders. Plus, they cover custodial fees for life on qualifying accounts. So take your first step toward diversifying your portfolio today with American Independence Gold. Write this number down and text the word gold to 717767 for a free investment guide. That's gold to 717767. Discover how gold and silver could fit into your portfolio with American Independence Gold. Text gold to 717767. Do it now. Okay. This is so fascinating to me, but it's also a little terrifying. When you said little Satan, big Satan, it reminded me of this moment post October 7th when a gentleman got up in front of cameras, and I think he was here in the States, and he said, and he was a cousin of one of the captors, one of the hostages. And I also think that he had family members killed. And he said, "They're coming for you next. They're coming for you next." And he was so adamant and he was so staunch in his messaging. And I remember just getting a chill. So in that way, and in many ways, Israel and the United States are so connected. Why do they need a strong relationship? And I hate to ask two questions at once, but why have some, like Biden, like Obama, really sort of been hostile toward Netanyahu and Israel?
Yeah, those are two good interrelated questions. And I remember that statement, and it really resonated with me as well. And, we at Heritage, watched in July, the day the prime minister was here giving his remarks to Congress, and we sit on Capitol Hill, so we could literally see the dome of the Capitol. But we also spent 20 minutes watching the protesters walk by, march down to Union Station and drag those big iconic flags down and burn them and replace them with Palestinian flags. And being from Philadelphia, I took particular offense at their vandalizing the cast of the Liberty Bell that's down there. But those weren't Israeli flags; those were American flags. Yeah. So that was a real physical indication of how how anti-American these people are and how violent they are. And I think in terms of both Obama and Biden, they took a very similar worldview. This is actually chapter 3 of the book, which is the basic question there is, what is the alternative to Israel? If you don't subscribe to the U.S.-Israel relationship being vital for our national security interests, what is your alternative? The answer to that is there are two, the Palestinians and the Iranians, and you have mighty attempts at outreach to both of them under both the Obama and the Biden administrations with very little success and actually a huge amount of downside for U.S. national security. But that is the attitude. And particularly in terms of Prime Minister Netanyahu, who I believe is the 11th prime minister of Israel, though certainly the longest serving, but not by any stretch of the imagination the only one. And he is duly elected by the Israeli people. Polling suggests that if they had an election tomorrow, he would be resoundingly reelected, even given the failure of October 7th,
Yeah.
but for his prosecution of the war. But it's not my business who's the prime minister of Israel. That's the business of the people of Israel. And so, I have my views on him. I've known him a long time, but this shouldn't be personality driven. And the left in the United States has become so hysterical about Netanyahu that they can't see that he's a duly elected leader, like Justin Trudeau, like any other leader of a parliamentary system. So it's curious and unfortunate.
Well, A, I hope Trudeau is gone soon, but B,
Well, there's that.
yeah, there is that. We have critical race theory that, and I have to imagine that CRT is somehow, we know that it's been infiltrating even our high schools and our universities. And where you see the protests is at the universities, by and large, right? They're at Columbia, at UCLA, all over the place. And so you have to ask yourself, well, who is influencing these protests? Who do you think is influencing these protests?
I think it's probably coming from two sources. And I, again, take this a little personally. I'm a Penn alum and was invited to campus by the Free Speech Society last April to give remarks. And the virulence with which the very announcement of the speech, the attacks on the website were such that I required 3 levels of armed guards to go to my own campus. Yeah. And talk about how I like free speech and I think hating Jews is a bad idea.
Controversial, Victoria. So controversial.
When did this become radical?
I don't know.
And, that speech wasn't free. The city of Philadelphia, the University of Pennsylvania, and the Heritage Foundation all paid so I could do that in safety. But that was really an eye-opener for me. And so on the one hand, it is coming out of the universities themselves. We've seen over the last 20 years a real infestation of anti-Semitic views, which have become fashionable on campus. In hindsight, I can see it as a catalyst of my departure from the academy in 2007, just because I was finding the atmosphere increasingly toxic, and I couldn't even put my finger on why, but now I can see that. I could see that ground, I could feel it shifting. So these are all the children of the 60s radicals. I delve into this a little bit in the book, look at some of the curricula, the syllabi that are informing this worldview. And then it's also coming from external forces. And very little fanfare in early July of this year, the DNI, Avril Haines, put out an official statement saying that they found Iranian collusion and money going to these protests. And for the administration to put out that statement, one can imagine how bad it was. Yeah, so we have both external and internal factors at work here.
How can that be allowed? And how can the United States government continue to finance or help fund some of these public and private universities that are accepting money from Qatar, from Iran, from China?
Now, I think this is a really important question, and President-elect Trump has spoken out about it quite forcefully. And, as a former academic, I can tell you the one thing they care more about than parking spaces is federal funding. And that is deadly serious business. And even if you sympathize with the views of the radical Middle East department or the law school where we've seen a lot of this, if you're in the chemistry department and you see your federal funding held at risk because of their behavior, even if you believe it to be accurate, that you agree with them, you're still coming for them because that's your funding. Yeah. So I think holding that funding at risk is an excellent first start. We can look at cases like the Holy Land Foundation case, in which a Palestinian support, theoretically charitable institution was found to be essentially supporting terrorism, and that is illegal. There can be both financial and legal jeopardy for that, and that statute can be expanded and strengthened. So I think that has to be a really concerted effort for the new administration to eradicate this very negative influence. But the good news is both on the state and federal level, it can be done.
Well, it can be done. And I hope we have more people with a spine. Certainly, President-elect Trump has a stronger spine than anyone currently in the White House. And I think we're all looking forward to that. Maybe even Doge will get involved. But it is astonishing to me. And again, I went to Berkeley. But now that when I look back on my time there, I can see strains of CRT and DEI that were there that I didn't notice, or as a 19-year-old kid, I thought, oh, isn't that nice? We're embracing diversity or whatever. And I myself, coming from an Hispanic background, I think I probably appreciated that, but I have learned, and I think many of my cohorts in the Hispanic lane in America, we really believe in hard work and meritocracy. And so we'd like to see this go away a little bit. But you're seeing university presidents cave to the demands of student groups who want certain quotas of professors or student leaders who are from other countries or represent this strain of liberal extremism, of Palestinian, support. And I just don't understand why these presidents cave.
No, it's quite a phenomenon. And I was honored, speaking of Hispanic Americans, that my former employer, Senator Ted Cruz, wrote the introduction to the book. Ted and I went on our first trip, or my first trip. He had been earlier in the year to Israel in 2014 together, so 10 years ago. And our experience working in the Senate on Israel issues really informed a lot of the book. But what he wrote about in the introduction was the testimony of the three college presidents last year, MIT, Penn, and Harvard.
Yeah.
I, as a Penn grad, obviously interested. He, as a Harvard grad, were very personally disturbed by the evidence of this, at the highest levels of our respective universities. And so, his introduction is called the Rot Exposed, and that this was on full display. And yes, the presidents of Harvard and Penn resigned. They're still tenured faculty members.
I know.
They just wrapped their fall classes. So, it in a way was window dressing that we still need to get after to really get rid of this. And their moral equivalency, their inability to say that threatening or murdering Jews is genocide. It was shocking, I think, to
breathtaking. I mean, it really was. And I remember we went on a college trip last summer, and we decided just to walk through Harvard for the heck of it. And, there were signs of that kind of thing everywhere. Well, it's no wonder that so many people have trouble sleeping. It's a turbulent world out there, and you've got responsibilities. It's the holidays. Listen, I have had trouble too, but let me tell you what I've found that is really helping me sleep better. This is no joke. It's not a drug. It's not a prescription. It's a cream. I just apply it at bedtime. Boom, simple. And listen, I was a total skeptic, but I tried it once and I was amazed that it really works. I sleep so much better. The company is Sleep Cream. They use all natural CBD combined with the finest essential oils. I just put it on before turning in for the evening, maybe on the bottoms of my feet, the insides of my wrists and forearms, insides of my elbows. That works best for me. And within minutes, it helps me relax, and it allows my body to do what it's supposed to do, which is sleep. You can find them at sleepcream.com. Just try it for a couple nights. See if it works for you as well as it does for me. And if you don't get better sleep, Sleep Cream will refund your purchase, guaranteed. You don't have to return anything. Go to sleepcream.com. That's sleepcream.com with cream spelled CREME.com. And for the next few weeks, use the code GAMEDAY at checkout, and you'll get free standard shipping off your first order. That's Game Day, all one word, at checkout to get that free standard shipping. If you're ready for your best sleep ever, and who's not, sleep, CREME.com. Use that word, Game Day. I wonder what your viewpoint is on national security here in the United States. The other thing that I remember when I was in California, it happened to be at the time my mother was dying. And so I was there with a lot of family, and October 7th happened. And again, I was sitting there just sick watching the news develop. And one of the people in the room said, "Could that ever happen here?" And two of us said, "It already has. Do you remember 9/11?" And then I was thinking about the border crisis that we've been experiencing over the last 4 years. How much of a threat do you think exists, or do you know exists here right now?
Well, first and foremost, I'm sorry for your loss. I lost
Thank
my
you.
father a couple of years ago. It's,
Yeah.
you know, the holidays are hard, but
Yep.
so
Yep.
sympathies to your family. But
Thank you.
it's, this is, I think, one of the key questions that informed, the 2024 presidential election was this
Mm.
open border and the inability of either President Biden or Vice President Harris to articulate a suitable strategy to combat it. And this is part of their worldview. This is part of this CRT driven, boundaries should be illegal. We don't really, possess the United States. The United States shouldn't be sovereign. It's probably illegal as well. So who are we to say who can and cannot come here? So that's kind of an article of faith for them. And they've been implementing that over the last 4 years. And we've seen heaven knows what get in. There was the plot disrupted for a terrorist attack on election day by somebody who'd come in from Afghanistan and been apparently radicalized since then. They just disrupted a plot of an Egyptian student at George Mason who was planning to go up and attack the Israeli consulate in New York, which would have had massive loss of life of Americans. And so all of that is now present in our country. And we have everything from people being set on fire in subways, to, murders and rapes down in Texas and Georgia. This has all been fairly individualized so far. But if these people start coordinating, and, that's what was really terrifying about the demonstrations in Washington was the sheer scale of them, the number of people involved. If that had tipped over, that can be, a rampaging massacre like what we saw on October 7th. And we know that thousands of people on the terrorist watch list have come in and been released. These records have been kept. And it's something I think, Tom Holman was working in my Davis Institute until President Trump rightly elevated him to be the border guard. We love Tom. I think he's absolutely the right person to get after this, but they've got their work cut out for them.
Yeah. When you say they've got their work cut out for them, what's the biggest barrier? Is it these sanctuary cities and states? Is it governors? What is their biggest, or is it the sheer number of people who are here?
I would say all of the above. It is a massive logistical task. We've just released a paper that Tom's group actually has put together with some guidelines on, the deportations. We've been working on the history of the use of the military for this. Just what are the options? What are the authorities? So that work has been done, but it is going to be Herculean because, some of these governors are standing by their sanctuary cities and their sanctuary states. And again, this is an article of faith for them. And so hopefully it doesn't take an incident to prompt reform, but it is certainly a flashing red danger.
Well, Victoria, as you know, as we all have been informed by Martha Raddatz, it was only a few apartment complexes in Aurora, Colorado that were taken over. So it's not like this is widespread. I mean, if that and the arrest recently there don't jolt the state of Colorado into some sort of action, I don't know why anyone would want to live there. Honestly, you say it's an article of faith. It seems to me it's also a kind of a middle finger to anyone who voted for Trump, to Trump in general, to the idea of Trump, and this notion that public safety is second to this. What does Gad Saad calls it? I'll come up with it, but it's like we're so kind and we're so generous that we're gonna commit suicidal empathy.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, and it's treating this as a social experiment. when it's people's lives. And I think that is also something that is critically important, is the metastasization between the terrorist groups who are here to undermine U.S. society, and then you have the gang cartel groups. Those two are coming together, and they making common cause, because what they hate is the United States. And so you increasingly have, say, Iranian groups employing, Mexican cartels, Mexican gangs, our Venezuelan gangs in the case of Aurora, to carry out their dirty work. And so this is increasingly becoming one bad problem.
I mentioned earlier, and it's worth saying again, when things feel uncertain, you want to find some sort of solid ground, particularly when the markets are freaking out and, there's war going on right now, still in Ukraine. We've got stuff going on in the Middle East. So I wanted to understand how to get my portfolio in order to get through these turbulent times. So I've learned about American Independence Gold. Now, gold and silver historically have stood the test of time. I'm talking about through wars like we're living through now, through recessions, through market crashes, because they're not just investments. They represent stability and peace of mind for families like yours and for families like mine. And right now, I'm holding a gold bar from American Independence Gold. It's in my hands. It's real. It's heavy. And it could be yours when you open a gold IRA worth $10,000 or more. American Independence Gold is a veteran-owned company. That's one of the things I love about it. They support our military families and first responders. Plus, they cover custodial fees for life on qualifying accounts. So you're going to want to investigate that as well. Take your first step toward diversifying your portfolio today with American Independence Gold. Write this number down and text the word gold to 717767 for a free investment guide. Again, text the word gold to 717767. Discover how gold and silver can fit into your portfolio with American Independence Gold. Text the word gold to 717767 and do it now. All right. It is December 23rd after all, Victoria. I have to ask you before I let you go, what gives you hope in this day?
What gives me the most hope, and this was one of actually the really uplifting parts about the book, and the fourth chapter goes into what's next. But what gives me hope, Michelle, is the fact that the Abraham Accords have endured over this year of war. And when we were in Israel in July, we met with the Emirati ambassador to Israel, and he said, "I am staying. I am not going anywhere." At my book launch party at Heritage last week, the Emirati ambassador to the United States, the Azeri ambassador to the United States, all came openly to celebrate this book supporting the U.S.-Israel alliance, along with a lot of Israelis. But it wasn't exclusively. And so the fact that those peace deals that President Trump was able to broker in 2020 have survived this, and in some ways even strengthened. UAE-Israel trade has hit a new high. Same thing with Morocco. So I think there is tremendous hope. I think Israel's done a great job dismantling some of these terrorist networks in the Middle East. I think we can take a page out of that book here at home. But with President Trump's reelection, I think there is a lot of reason to be hopeful, even given the challenges we face.
Well, I thank you for that, because we all need a dose of that. We're all looking forward, and we're just praying that this next month goes quietly and peacefully here, everywhere, but here especially at home, where we pay for that peace out of our tax dollars. So, Victoria, thank you so much. I'd love to do it again. You have such a fascinating background and clearly an in-depth knowledge in an area that I don't. So I love having guests like you on. Thank you so much, and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy to do it anytime. And one other thing is next week we have, or not next week, this week, we have the coincidence of Hanukkah and Christmas for the first time in more than a century. So there should be light and hope and celebration for all people of good faith. And hope.
I was going to mention that, and I thought, I wonder how long it's been. And you answered that for me. It is significant to me. I just got goosebumps. So thank you again for reminding us. Yeah, the first day of Hanukkah is December 25th, folks. That should count for something. She's Victoria Coates. You can find her book title and all the information of where you can get it in the show notes. And we've been showing you the book cover, so please support her work. Victoria, thanks again. Happy New Year as well.
Happy New Year. Take care.
As always, folks, be brave, do good, and we'll see you after Christmas. January 20th is the day. Washington, D.C. is the place. That's when and where Donald Trump will be inaugurated as the 47th president of the United States. And we want to send you there. You can win a once-in-a-lifetime VIP experience to attend the inauguration in Washington, D.C., including airfare for you and a guest to Washington, a 3-night stay in the nation's capital, tickets for the presidential inauguration, and much more. Don't miss this extraordinary opportunity to celebrate the greatness, history, and excitement of a presidential inauguration. To enter, see the link in the show notes for this episode or go to SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump. That's SalemPodcastNetwork.com/Trump.